All right.
We've got, are your enemies innately evil?
Spoiler, no.
Yeah. So this is, by the way, a great example of the what is it? The Betteridge law, I think. Which not raw. They call it the law, but these are generally rules. That any headline that ends with a question can be answered by the word no.
Yes.
And honestly, our last episode fell prey to that. I think when we said, "Is rationalism being co-opted by the alt-right?" Ended in a question mark.
We should have put more capitalization in it and we should have made it a 5-hour episode before we got to that subject to just make it true clickbaity fashion.
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
Yeah.
Little subtext. Scientists are baffled.
Yeah. But basically, this post is saying your enemies are not innately evil. The first quote I pulled is, there seems to be a very strong tendency to blame evil deeds on the enemy's mutant evil disposition. Not as a moral point, but as a strict question of prior probability, we should ask what the enemy might believe about their situation that would reduce the seeming bizarrety of their behavior. This would allow us to hypothesize a less exceptional disposition and thereby shoulder a lesser burden of improbability. And I would just like to say, I also consider this a mark of good fiction. I kind of understand that lots of times when people are reading fiction, they want escapism. They want the Nazi or the zombie, the enemy who is irredeemably evil, and you can cheer for the hero punching them and killing them because they are evil mutants and they need to be killed, and that's what people want to see. That's fun, right? But I don't think it's great writing because in the real world, there's no one like that. You can demonize people to make them look like evil mutants, but they aren't in reality.
Yeah, thinking of like Wheel of Time, which is the biggest fantasy thing I've ever read.
I've never had you talk about fiction and not mention Wheel of Time.
Maybe because I don't read enough.
Okay.
And definitely per page count, it's the biggest thing. Well, maybe, I'm not sure how big it compares to Worm and Ward, but maybe it's getting close.
I think Worm is bigger.
It might be. Well, it's definitely, I don't know.
Maybe.
We'll cross
They're
the numbers
comparable.
later. But in any case, well, certainly in Worm, the bad guys, with the possible exception of like the head of the Slaughterhouse 9, he's just a psychopath, but he's like the Joker in the sense that he's interesting.
Yeah.
Like and he's not trying to end the world because he's a bad guy. He's just like, I just like fucking things up, and there's other fuckery going on there that causes that stuff. But in Wheel of Time, the big baddie is the Dark One, who's like literally like the embodiment, although not even like quite physically instantiated version of like the dark side of the Force. But his lieutenants are basically the people that are the antagonists throughout the book series, and they all have their motivations and they're conniving and interesting and all that sort of stuff. So I like that. I like this post too because there's like a watered down version of it where like, and I know we're belaboring it, but this is a good time to inject it. Like I've complained about like previous coworkers, like, oh yeah, this guy was always late, this guy didn't care about his job. At the end of the day, like these are people who are doing what they can, and like. I might have mentioned this on the show before, but like it was the senior guy that like never came to work and was honestly a terrible role model. I didn't really get along with him. Like we had nothing in common. And then shortly after we started working together, one of his cats died and he was like distraught over it. And I was like, dude, I can relate. And we talked about it a lot because he was dealing with it and, and like, I remember having this kind of wake up moment where I was like, you know what? I don't have to like this guy. But I get him, at least on this level. He's just another guy who like loved his cat, and like I realize like that sounds shallow, but the deeper thing behind it was like I think that's the way it is with everybody that you're disagreeing with. Like there are people who are just leeches and are going to be mean like at work or something, right?
Mm.
But like nobody's innately evil. Very few people are innately evil, and I think there's always a way to like empathize with the person on a way that you can at least connect with them, right? So yeah, I won't dig into that too much, but. It's important for like not walking around hating people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think Elias makes a good point that if the enemy did have an evil disposition, that would be an argument in favor of your side. So any argument that favors your side must be supported no matter how silly. Soon the enemy has horns, and if you deny any aspect of this on merely factual grounds, you are arguing the enemy side, and you are a traitor.
Merely factual grounds.
Right. Which, yeah, I see sometimes, and that is very disheartening.
Yeah.
Very few people will understand that you aren't defending the enemy, just defending the truth. I've had this happen. It's very frustrating. Like, I think, Stephen, you have brought up people making up lies about Trump, and then you point out, like, that's actually completely factually incorrect. Like,
Why are you defending Trump?
Some kind of Trump supporter?
It's like, no, man, let's just point to all the real crazy shit, because every time that we lie and conflate, then that's and that's specifically for this kind of example, but like then they can point to like, oh, see, they lied about this, we can prove it, therefore I don't believe any other stuff they're saying. But the real short version is like, and this was written 12 years ago, so 9/11 is a lot fresher in everybody's heads.
Mm-hmm.
He mentions like that the hijackers weren't like these deranged psychopaths who just wanted to kill America because we're a beacon of freedom and they're mutants who hate freedom.
Mm-hmm.
They did it for what felt to them like very good reasons, and they were they
were protecting their people.
Yeah, and they were martyrs in their minds and in the minds of their supporters. But to say, could you imagine somebody going on the news on September 15th, like, a couple days, like, while the dust is still settling, and being like, look, guys, they weren't monsters, but, and like, I think the climate of the time, people would have been okay with the person being dragged off camera and beaten, right? Like, so,
I heard people, like, outright give that explanation. They're like, yeah, well, terrorists, they hate freedom.
Yeah, that was the
I remember being
narrative.
a child and hearing that and being like, I don't think that's how humans work.
Hmm.
I was also a child. I remember hearing that, and I didn't have that thought. I was still at the age where I was just absorbing stuff, and like, well, if you say so. Yeah, it's a great post. I wish there's not. I don't know.
Yeah,
we're on a time crunch, and once again, to reiterate, that's my fault. I was late. So
Okay. Can I just read the last paragraph because it's really punchy?
yeah.
Sure.
That was, when you accurately estimate the enemy's psychology, when you know what is really in the enemy's mind, that knowledge won't feel like landing a delicious punch on the opposing side. It won't give you a warm feeling of righteous indignation. If your estimate makes you feel unbearably sad, you may be seeing the world as it really is.
It's good shit, man.
That's good.
Yeah, everybody that you've ever hated could be somebody that you like would have loved if things had been a little different.
This is why we read Eliezer. He's just good at those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think, how did you put it? Like the best, like the highest, like insight to word ratio or something.
Yeah.
I love that.
Next post is 2 more things to unlearn from school.
More things to unlearn.
And I think there's only 1 in here, but I don't know. Maybe I was counting 2, conflating 2 together. Anyways.
I'm way ahead of you. I already forgot most of everything I learned in school. Checkmate, you Kowski. No.
Eliezer says, I suspect the most dangerous habit of thought taught in schools is that even if you don't really understand something, you should parrot it back anyway. One of the most fundamental life skills is realizing when you are confused, and school actively destroys this ability. Many students who have gone through this process no longer even realize when something confuses them, or notice gaps in their understanding. They have been trained out of pausing to think. And he also proposes a possible solution. Maybe you could avoid handing students knowledge on a silver platter. Instead, show students different versions of physics equations that look plausible and ask them to figure out which was the correct one, or invent experiments which would distinguish between alternatives.
I didn't get exercises like that until college, and it was never physics. I studied a squishy science like psychology, but I remember, like in high school or in like college level biology or something, they'd ask you like design an experiment that would confirm or deny this claim or something, and it kind of sucks that you have to be in your 20s taking electives to get to that level. Or at least an elective level of education.
In most of high school, I had a few good teachers, I will say, and I think my parents were pretty good at being encouraging and that sort of thing too. But most of the things that I wanted to find out, it was like myself thinking, why is that? And then following up with questions or trying to read about it, as opposed to being taught that in school. I think that may have worked out well. But the one thing I really, really remember to this day was in physics in high school. I had this amazing physics teacher. I was in the AP physics, so this wasn't like given to everyone. But he started us out on Einstein's photoelectric effect. That's what it was. And we thought we were just learning like electricity and magnetism and basically that level of stuff. And he walked us through, like we did the experiments ourselves, re-deriving how to get E equals MC squared. And like by the time you're getting to the end and you're on the last few steps before the final line, you realize what's happening and you're like, oh, holy shit, this is amazing. I have just re-derived the most famous equation in physics and I see how it happened. And obviously it's not nearly as hard as having to come up with it on your own from the beginning and like, why is this happening? How could this possibly work? Like we had to kind of laid out for us in a garden path, but going down that path the first time and not knowing what we were getting at the end was really neat. And I wish more people would have experience like that.
Yeah, I can't think of any examples like that offhand, but they probably happened, I hope. But that sounds wonderful, and that sounds like the way it should be taught. The downside of doing it the way that you do it in schools now is like there's no time to do it that way because we've got to teach these 70 things for the exam that the state issued for us, and you guys are only in here this number of hours, so we can't spend 20 hours doing this one thing.
Right.
But yeah, you still remember that, you
Yeah.
know, and that's how impactful it was.
Yeah.
And that sounds fantastic. Yeah, I think that's the right way to do it. I don't have anything else to say. I mean, you could do something similar, like, you could do this with just, this is what the book The Greatest Show on Earth does, Richard Dawkins' book for evolution, is way belabored because he rambles a bit, but, like, in a way that, if you like the artful way that he does stuff.
Yeah, I found it, like, just really enjoyable to read because I liked his tone.
Same here. Yeah, it's so. I guess what I'm getting at is it's way less direct than than you would do in a college or in a classroom setting of like trying to teach the same thing.
Right.
But he has this poetry of and this passion in writing that I really liked. But that's what he does. He takes it the slow way, and so by the end you're like, oh, I've seen all the things, not firsthand, but you know, I've read enough of the observations that were made to put this together. Now I get it, and it's not just like some knowledge that someone told me about, and that like you're told basically take this on faith. It's like, no, I can follow the whole thing now.
Yeah, it's a short post, but has a neat point, and I agree.
I'm really hoping that future school systems incorporate VR or just like really good simulations and are actually structured in such a way where students can do their own experiments.
That would be cool. Okay, for next week, we will cover the LessWrong posts, Making Beliefs Pay Rent in Anticipated Experiences, Belief in Belief, and Bayesian Judo. So we'll have 3.
Those first 2 are ones that we've referenced maybe 100 times total on the podcast so far.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, these are some weighty ones.
yeah.
Yep.